People hear mountain family and they picture a pot of beans and a pone of cornbread, and 6 days a week they'd be right. But not Sunday. Sunday the preacher was coming, or the married daughter was home, or it was just the Lord's Day, and that was reason enough. And Ma would lay a table with a dozen dishes on it. Fried chicken, 3 kinds of pie, a cake tall as your hand. And every bit of it came off one wood cook stove and out of one woman's head. I've eaten in restaurants since that charge $40 for less and meant it less. Here's the twist. Number 12 is the dish that put half a church on the ground sick of a July afternoon, and it wasn't spoiled meat. Number 3 she'd wring a hen's neck for before you got your coat off. And number 1 isn't a food at all. It's the reason none of it tastes the same now. Let's count down the 25 Sunday dinners Appalachian grandmothers made that nobody cooks anymore. Number 25, light rolls. 6 days a week, bread meant cornmeal. You grew the corn, carried it to the mill, and it cost you nothing but the walk. Sunday meant wheat, and wheat meant the store. Ma kept a little white flour back in a lard can just for Sunday, set a sponge Saturday night to work by the warm of the bank stove, and pulled out a pan of soft white rolls come noon, ones you tore apart in your hands. That white roll told you, before you tasted a thing, that this was the company meal. Let a draft hit the dough while it's rising, and it'll fall flat and bake up heavy as a hymnal. My grandmother's rolls I've never tasted the equal of, and she's been in the ground since 1979. It was never written down. It was her hands knowing when the sponge was ready. Number 24, green beans cooked till they gave up. Not the bright, squeaky bean they set in front of you now. Sunday beans went on of a morning, a mess of half-runners strung and snapped, a piece of side meat down in the pot, water to cover, and they cooked low 3 or 4 hours till the pot liquor went cloudy and the beans turned the color of an old dollar. Folks'll tell you that's ruined. It isn't. Slow heat breaks the bean all the way down and carries the fat and salt of that meat clean through it, and the liquor left in the pot is half the reason you baked bread. Cook 'em fast and they're just green and squeak on your teeth. Let the pot cook dry and they scorch, and the whole batch tastes of it. Nobody's got 4 hours for a bean anymore. That's the loss, not the recipe, the morning. Number 23. Fried okra. Okra came up the mountains late, and it was never loved here the way it's loved down in the flatland. But of a hot August Sunday, Ma cut it in coins, rolled it in meal with a little salt, and dropped it in grease hot enough to dance a drop of water. 2 things ruin okra. Grease not hot enough, so it stews in its own slick instead of crusting, because okra's full of a slime that only high heat and that meal coat will set against. And crowding the skillet, which drops the heat and steams the whole batch soft. Done right, it comes out dry and crackling, a jewel of a thing you eat like popcorn. There's 100 ways to eat okra now, and near none of 'em is this one. Number 22, cucumbers and onions. Nothing to it, and that's the point. Cucumbers off the vine sliced thin, a mild onion in with 'em, covered in vinegar cut with a little water and a spoon of sugar, set in the cool of the spring house an hour before dinner. The vinegar pulls the water out of the cucumber and firms it back up, so it goes from limp to crisp while it sits. That's the whole trick. Leave it 2 days, though, and it goes to mush. It was a cool, sharp bite against everything fried and rich on the plate. Simple as it is, I don't see it on a table anymore. Number 21, slaw, the fresh kind, not the kraut. Carla you buried in a crock and waited a month on. Slaw you made that same morning. A head of cabbage shaved fine, a carrot grated in if you had one, dressed one of 2 ways depending on the house. Some dressed it sweet and sour, with vinegar and sugar and a little hot bacon grease poured over. Some dressed it creamy, with a boiled dressing or, later on, store mayonnaise. Salt the cabbage and let it stand too long and it weeps its water out and goes limp. So you dress slaw right before you carry it out. There's slaw in every store cooler now, sitting in a tub. Shave a cabbage by hand for 12 people and you'll understand what got lost when they quit. Number 20. Baked macaroni and cheese. Baked, not stirred up on the stove out of a blue box. This one Mr. Jefferson served at his own table in 1802. On a mountain Sunday, it was cooked macaroni layered in a dish with grated cheese and a custard of egg and milk poured over, then baked till it's set and browned on top. The egg is what makes it. It sets the whole thing into something you can cut a square out of, not a pot of sauce. Skimp the egg, or bake it too hot, and it breaks. The fat weeps out and it goes greasy and grainy. Cheese cost money, so this was a Sunday dish, a company dish. The blue box killed it. That's the everyday made find, the beans and the bread and the garden all dressed up for company. From here we get to the dishes that only ever showed up on a Sunday. If you're the kind that finds this worth writing down, subscribe. I put one of these up every few days. Number 19. Pickled peaches. You'd think a peach on a Sunday plate was dessert. This one sat next to the meat. Late summer, when the trees came in all at once and you couldn't eat or can 'em fast enough, Ma put up whole clingstone peaches in a syrup of vinegar, sugar, and whole spice, a clove or two stuck in each peach, a stick of cinnamon in the jar. They keep a year on the cellar shelf. The whole spice isn't for looks. Whole clove and stick cinnamon hold their oil slow. Ground spice would cloud the syrup and turn it bitter by Christmas. Boil the syrup too hard and the peach falls to pieces. A dish of pickled peaches on the table said somebody planned back in August for a dinner in December. Nobody's planning a plate that far ahead now. Number 18. Creamed peas and new potatoes. When the English peas came in green and sweet the same 2 or 3 weeks the first new potatoes got big enough to dig, you had a narrow window and no more. New potatoes no bigger than a hen egg, boiled in their skins. Shelled peas cooked just till they popped, all of it folded into a thin white gravy of milk, butter, and a little flour. Cook the peas 20 minutes like the dried ones and they go gray and mealy. Fresh spring peas want about 5. The whole dish tasted of one exact fortnight in May. You cannot buy that. And that's exactly why it's gone. It quit being the taste of a season and became just another side you could have whenever. Number 17. Ambrosia. Now here's where a mountain Sunday reached onto something from far off. Ambrosia is nothing but oranges and fresh coconut, peeled, cut, and layered with a little sugar. It shows in Southern cookbooks back to the 1860s, but think what it took. An orange and a whole coconut, up in these mountains, in the dead of winter, came in on the railroad, came at Christmas, and cost. A child might get one orange in the toe of a stocking, and that was the whole year's citrus. So a bowl of ambrosia meant Christmas, meant cash money spent, meant the good and the rare set out for the people you loved. You section the oranges over the bowl to catch the juice, and grate the coconut fresh. The bagged kind's got sugar in it, and it's never the same. Bright, cold, and a little holy, and hardly a soul makes it now. Number 16. The congealed salad. Call it a Jell-O salad if you're younger. Flavored gelatin came along. Jell-O was first put up in a little town in New York in 1897, and the mountain women made a whole art of it. Lime gelatin with grated cheese and crushed pineapple. Cherry with black walnuts, set in a mold, turned out on a lettuce leaf, shivering on the plate. Here's the trick nobody tells you. Fresh pineapple won't let it set. There's something in the raw fruit that eats the gelatin, so it had to be the canned. And let it get warm on the ride to church and it slumps into colored soup. For 50 years no covered dish dinner was without one. Now you can go to 100 and not see a single one. Number 15. Squash casserole. When the yellow summer squash came on in July, it came on like a flood. You'd give it to anybody who'd take a sack. So the women turned a mess of soft, watery squash into a company dish. Squash and onion cooked down soft, then drained hard. And that draining is the whole secret, because summer squash is near all water, and if you don't press it out, you've made soup. Then it's bound with egg and a little cheese, topped with crushed cracker or cornbread, and baked till it browns. It took the cheapest, most desperate glut in the garden and made something you'd set in front of the preacher. Skip the draining and it never sets. It weeps and slides off the spoon. It's a humble miracle, mostly gone the way of the garden that made it necessary. Number 14, pear salad. This one'll make a young cook laugh, and then their grandmother will go quiet. A canned pear half, set cut side up on a lettuce leaf, a dab of mayonnaise in the hollow, a little grated cheese, and a cherry on top if you were fancy. That's the whole thing. It sounds like nothing, but a can of pears and a jar of store mayonnaise were both cash money in a house that had little, and setting one out, one pretty half per person arranged just so, was a woman saying plain as words, "I fixed this for you." It was never about the flavor. It was about the trouble taken. Somebody arranged a canned pear on a leaf because you were worth the arranging. Number 13, banana pudding. Bananas, like the orange, came up on the train, but by the early 1900s they came cheap and steady, and banana pudding took hold and never turned loose. The real thing is three things built in one dish: a soft custard cooked slow on the stove, sliced banana, and vanilla wafers laid in to soften into a kind of cake. Then a meringue whipped from the leftover whites, browned in the oven. The custard's the danger. Too hot, too fast, and the egg scrambles, and you've got sweet yellow curds. You cook it low, stirring, till it just coats the back of the spoon and not a second past. Made from a box of instant pudding, it's a different creature, and that's mostly what it is now. Number 12, the dish that put the church on the ground. Here's the one that turned a celebration into a sickness. Every account of an old dinner on the grounds has it somewhere. The summer everybody took sick. It wasn't spoiled meat, and it wasn't poison. It was the deviled eggs, or the potato salad, or the chicken, sitting out on a plank table in the July sun from the end of morning service till folks got back to it in the middle of the afternoon. Here's what nobody understood then. There's a range of warmth, the USDA calls it the danger zone, between 40 and 140 degrees, where the bacteria that make you sick double about every 20 minutes. A bowl of deviled eggs in 90-degree churchyard heat is a factory running full out. 2 hours is the outside limit for food left in that range, and above 90 degrees it's 1 hour. Past that, you're rolling dice with everybody you fed. And here's the cruelest part. One of these bugs is a staph that lives on our own hands and gets in the food from the handling, and it makes a poison heat won't undo. You can carry that potato salad home and boil it, and the bug dies, and the poison stays, and you're still sick that night. The mountain families didn't know the why, but they knew the pattern. Don't eat it if it's set out all day, and they were reading a real danger they had no name for. So if you carry the old dishes to a summer gathering, carry the deviled eggs on ice, and when in doubt, throw it out. That isn't fear. That's the one part of all this the old people would have give anything to know. That's the middle of the meal. From here on down, we're into the dishes people would drive clear across the county for. The pies, the cakes, and the one bird a family would kill for company. Number 11, potato salad. I know it's on every table still, but not this one. Sunday potato salad was boiled potatoes cut up warm, so they drink in the dressing instead of sliding off it, and that's the piece near everybody misses. Then chopped boiled egg, a sweet pickle diced in, a little onion, mustard, and a boiled dressing or mayonnaise, and it sat in the cool till dinner. Cut them cold and then dress them, and it's flat. Cut them warm and season them as they cool, and it's another dish. It rode to every church dinner and funeral and homecoming there ever was. The store makes a tub of it now that no mountain woman would have served, and the warm potato trick that made hers worth eating went in the ground with her. Number 10, watermelon rind pickles. Here's thrift turned into something fine. You ate the red heart of the melon on the porch and spit the seeds off the steps, and most folks pitched the rind to the hogs. The mountain women peeled the green skin off that rind, cut the pale part into cubes, and put it up in a sweet spiced vinegar syrup with clove and cinnamon till it went clear and glassy, near like candy. It took 2 days, a lime or salt soak first to firm the cube up, or it melts to mush in the hot syrup, and it turned the very part you'd have thrown away into a jewel on the Christmas table. Almost nobody alive has 2 spare days to make a pickle out of what they were fixin' to feed the hogs. Number 9. Chess pie. Poorest ingredients in the pantry, finest pie on the table. Eggs, sugar, butter, and a spoon of cornmeal to hold it. And that cornmeal's the tell of a true chess pie. It sets the custard and leaves a little grain on your tongue, and a splash of vinegar to cut the sweet. A whole pie made from what's always in the house. No fruit, no nuts, nothing bought. Bake it too hot and the top cracks and the middle sinks. Low and slow, and it sets to a glossy, quivering custard that just holds a cut. And nobody rightly knows where the name comes from. Some say it's just pie, plain pie. Some say it's the pie chest it kept in. I won't tell you I know, because I don't, and there's enough folks telling you they know the origin of things they made up on the spot. What I know is it was Sunday sweet, made out of nothing, and you don't see it now. Number 8. Chicken pie. And not the little pot pie in a tin dish. This was a deep one, a whole stewed hen pulled off the bone, her broth thickened, poured over and under a good crust, and baked till it bubbled through. The hen had to be an old one, a layer past her prime. A young fryer cooks up stringy in a pie, but an old hen stewed slow goes tender, and her broth turns to gold. Watch the bottom crust. Too much broth and it never bakes. It just sops. It was how you fed a crowd off one bird and made it feel like plenty. The old hen's the thing that's gone. Nobody keeps a flock long enough to have a spent layer to stew anymore. Number 7. The jam cake. This was the Christmas cake, the wedding cake, the cake that meant the biggest days of the year. A spice cake with blackberry jam beat into the batter, baked in layers, and stacked with a caramel icing cooked in a skillet. Burnt sugar and butter and cream stirred to the soft ball and spread while it's warm enough to move. 2 things wreck it, both the icing. Pull that caramel off too soon and it never firms. It slides off the cake in a warm puddle. Pull it too far and it seizes to hard candy in the pan before you can spread a lick. There's a woman in most every family who was the one that made the jam cake, and when she went, the cake mostly went with her. Ours was my great aunt, and I have her receipt written out, and I've never once got that icing to behave. Number 6. Boiled custard. Don't let the name fool you. The one rule is you never let it boil. It's a drink, thin enough to pour in a cup, made of milk, sugar, egg yolks, and vanilla, cooked over the barest heat and stirred without stopping till it just coats the spoon. Let it get 1 degree too far and the egg curdles, and the whole thing breaks into grain and whey, and there's no fixing it. You pour it out and start over. That risk is why it was special. It took a steady hand and a patient half hour, and you made it for Christmas and for the sick. A cup of cold boiled custard was medicine and treat both. It's near extinct now, and the young folks who hear the name think you're describing a mistake. Number 5. Ice cream, cranked by hand on the porch. This was the whole afternoon's event, not just a dish, a Sunday in high summer. The freezer packed with ice and coarse rock salt, and every young'un taking a turn at the crank. The salt's the marvel of it. Salt on the ice drops the temperature well below plain freezing, colder than ice by itself can get, and that's the cold that turns the custard in the can. Whoever's arm is on the crank when it's done gets the first lick off the dasher. Too much salt in the ice water and it freezes too fast and grains up. Not enough and you crank an hour for soup. Ice cost money, or a hard winter's cutting and hauling, so it was rare, and it was earned. A machine hums one out on the counter now while you do something else, and there's nobody arguing over whose turn it is. Number 4. Chocolate pie, the tall meringue kind. Under a brown-peaked cloud of whipped white 6 inches high, a cooked chocolate filling, near a pudding, poured hot into a baked shell, and the meringue whipped from the whites those eggs already gave up, piled on and browned in the oven. 2 failures, both common. The meringue weeps a sugary sweat and slides off if you put it on cold filling. It's got to go on hot so it cooks from underneath and grabs. And it beads and browns wrong if there's 1 speck of yolk or 1 drop of grease in the whites. It was the show-off pie, the one a woman got known for. Every family had somebody whose chocolate pie was the chocolate pie. And when she passed, that exact pie passed with her, because it lived in her hands and her oven, and never once, in full, on paper. Number 3, fried chicken, the Sunday bird. They called it the gospel bird, and there's a hard truth under the joke. When the preacher came to Sunday dinner, a chicken died for it. Chicken was the meat you kept alive in the yard and killed fresh for company. 6 days a week, those hens were worth more laying eggs than they'd ever be in the pan. But Sunday, for the preacher or the married children home to visit, you took the youngest, a spring fryer, 10 or 12 weeks old and tender. And you did the whole thing start to finish that same morning. Caught her, killed her, scalded and picked and dressed her, cut her into pieces, and by dinner she was rolled in salted flour and frying in a cast-iron skillet of lard deep enough to come halfway up the piece. Here's the part folks get wrong now. It's not deep-fried, swimming in a vat. It's pan-fried, turned just once, in a heavy skillet that holds its heat dead even. Too hot, and the flour burns black before the thighs cook to the bone. Too cool, and it soaks up grease and comes out limp and pale. And you save every bit of the drippings and the brown in the skillet for the milk gravy that goes over the biscuits. 1 woman, 1 skillet, 1 hen she'd raised from a chick, feeding a full table off a bird that cost her nothing but the raisin. There's a bucket of it on every corner in America now for a few dollars. It is not the same thing. And every person over 70 watching this knows exactly what I mean. Number 2, the coconut cake. If the jam cake was Christmas, the fresh coconut cake was Easter, and the very finest company. A tall, white layer cake under a snowdrift of grated coconut, and I mean fresh. A whole coconut, brought up on the same train the orange rode, cost money and cost work both. You punched the eyes and drained the water, cracked the hard shell, pried the white meat out and grated it by hand, saving that coconut water to brush into the layers so they drank it in and stayed damp for days. A boiled white icing, cooked to a thread and beat till it stood in peaks, and the fresh coconut pressed all over it while the icing was still tacky enough to hold. The bagged coconut, sweet and dry, makes a lesser cake. The fresh has a milk to it nothing in a bag ever had. It was the cake you made when you wanted somebody to know they were the most welcome thing that ever came up your road. Almost nobody cracks a whole coconut for a cake now. Number 1, dinner on the ground. And the last one isn't a dish at all. It's the table itself. Dinner on the ground. Come summer, come homecoming Sunday, come decoration day, when the whole community met to clean the graves and remember its dead, the church house couldn't hold the meal, so they carried long planks out under the oak trees, or spread cloths right on the grass among the headstones. And every family on that ridge set down the best thing it could make. And here's what that was. Everything on this whole list, all at once, on one long board, 100 foot of it. Every woman's fried chicken side by side so you could tell one hand from the next. Every jam cake and coconut cake and chocolate pie in a row. The pickled peaches, the deviled eggs, the beans that cooked since morning. You walked that table with a tin plate and took a little of everybody's, and you knew whose was whose without asking, because a woman's cooking was as much her own hand as her voice was. The dishes are the part nobody makes anymore, but the dishes were never really the point. The point was a whole community setting its best out on a board in the open air, once or twice a year, to feed each other, and to sit down in the same place as the people already in the ground. That's the thing that's gone, not the recipe. Anybody can find a recipe. The gathering. The reason to spend a whole Saturday on a cake tall as your hand was that come Sunday, 200 people you'd known your entire life would see it, and taste it, and know that you had made it. We eat alone now, or in twos, fast, out of paper sacks. Nobody's arranging a canned pear on a leaf for anybody. That table under the oaks was a whole way of living alongside one another, laid right out where you could see it, and it's closing one grandmother at a time. Here's my challenge. Pick one, just one, off this whole list, and make it for people this month. Not for a picture, for a table. Cook a mess of beans since morning. Crack a real coconut for a cake. Fry a chicken in a skillet the old way, and make the gravy out of the brown in the pan. Then tell me down in the comments, what was the dish your grandmother was known for? The one nobody's made since the day she passed? And what county were her people in? Tell me if anybody in your family still sets a real Sunday table, still keeps a cake plate that only comes down off the shelf for company. Because that's a library too, same as any skill on this channel. A few hundred women who could feed 100 people out of a garden and a wood stove and their own 2 hands. And it's closing one kitchen at a time, one funeral at a time, and the most of it was never written down at all. One thing before I go, and I'll only say it the once. Everything I know, everything on this channel, I'm putting in a book, sourced the way we do it here, every claim with where it comes from, so it's written down and checkable before the last of us takes it into the ground. If you want it, it's at EzraCade.com. That's the only time you'll hear me say it. They knew. Now it's written down.